But first, two big stories in the law meets politics world with both Donald Trump and Hunter Biden in court today. And as you can imagine, for the partisan media, oh, it's the Super Bowl, right? The left-leaning media gets to talk about Donald Trump in court. The right-leaning media gets to talk about Hunter Biden in court, and they get to celebrate it. Well, here we're going to do it in a more balanced way. Former Republican Maryland Governor Larry Hogan will join us in studio in a moment. Starting with Trump, accused of misrepresenting his net worth by billions. Once again, the former president did not need to be there, but his presence speaks to just how important he considers this case and how he's basically treating it as a campaign stop, trashing New York Attorney General Letitia James and the judge. The case has largely been decided by the judge already, with the main question remaining: what will the punishment be for the efforts to significantly inflate assets when it helped him, or decrease assets when that was beneficial to him? But the former president got himself in real hot water by attacking someone else today. Judge Arthur Engoron placed a limited gag order on Trump after the former president targeted the judge's law clerk by falsely smearing her as Chuck Schumer's girlfriend and sharing an Instagram profile with his followers on Truth Social. The post was deleted, but not before it was mailed to millions of Trump's followers. Judge Engoron admonished Trump, saying, quote, "Personal attacks of any member of my court staff are unacceptable, inappropriate, and I will not tolerate them." The judge went on to threaten serious sanctions should the order be violated. We're also going to talk about Kevin McCarthy getting ousted. Perfect guest to talk about all of this, Larry Hogan, former Republican governor of Maryland and honorary chair of An America United. Governor, thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
Nice to see you in person.
Great to be here.
So what do you make of Donald Trump going to court? I mean, do you think that there is political advantage for him in showing up?
I think he thinks so. Obviously, he's very good about messaging and getting out there and trying to argue his case in the media. I'm not sure it's great. I'm sure his lawyers probably didn't give him the advice to be there. I don't think he had to be. But, there's no question that he's trying to win the court of public opinion, and he has been successful in rallying people to his defense, and he's trying to get those arguments in.
You think there's ever a line where it's sort of crossed, right? You're talking about a clerk here, right? The judge is a big boy, and what I mean by that is, of course, he's, a high-profile position, et cetera. Judges, prosecutors kind of have to accept to some degree that they're going to get criticized. What degree is a separate question, but a law clerk, because she's whispering in the judge's ear as law clerks do, getting targeted, anyone you think going to be bothered by that on the Trump side?
Well, that's the question. I think it probably does bother a lot of people that think it's beyond the pale and it's taken it a step too far. But I'm not sure that his base is going to react that way. Whatever crazy stuff he says, they seem to continue to support him. But I think the judge certainly didn't like it much, and now he's placed this limited gag order on him.
I think Trump is really taking this case personally, right? This is about his success, about his identity, right?
It seems as if he's taking this one much more personally. And
yeah.
It's either about his whole ego about how much money he has and how successful he is. It goes to the core of who Donald Trump is. But he's also potentially going to lose a lot of money.
Yeah,
which he's not happy about.
I want to ask you about Kevin McCarthy in a moment, but I want to bring in Ankush Kardori, former federal prosecutor, contributing editor for New York Magazine. Ankush, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Legally, it's starting to feel like Trump is almost daring the judge to impose this gag order, and that the judge obliged.
Yes, that's exactly my read on the situation ever since yesterday when he began this sort of fusillade of commentary, which is extremely unwise as a legal matter. It's a very stupid, bad legal strategy, but it is apparently a political strategy. I've been thinking like he's practically asking the judge to do this to him. He maybe even wants the judge to do it to him so that he can now go complain that, he's being silenced while all these government folks are coming after him. It's hard for me to otherwise divine any sort of logic to the behavior here, because it really is beyond the pale to be attacking staff.
Real quick, let me ask you, what happens now if he violates it? What happens if he does something again?
I would imagine, if I were the judge at least, I would be thinking about escalating financial sanctions, right? It's the only thing Trump seems to care about. And it's well within, I expect, the court's authority to start to sort of begin to issue some graduating sort of sanctions if he just keeps going.
Yeah. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.